What if the most fearsome villains weren't just evil counterparts, but products of a world that shaped them into something far darker? The male doppelgangers of the Powerpuff Girls, who aren't just the opposites, but rather they personify a blessing and a curse of the modern philosophy, nihilism. The Rowdyruff boys stand out from other villains in the Powerpuff Girls series not just as evil doppelgangers, but as some of the most nihilistic characters in the show. Unlike the Powerpuff Girls, who balance their superhero duties with a relatively normal childhood, the Rowdyruff boys' upbringing is a stark contrast. Born in a prison and raised by villains like Mojo Jojo and him, their entire existence is shaped by a life of crime and destruction. While the Powerpuff Girls enjoy school, friends, and a happy childhood, the Rowdyruff boys are steeped in a world of villainy with no room for normal kid experiences. They're driven by a ruthless desire to destroy rather than by any genuine childhood interests or personal growth. If they ever returned as adults or teenagers, it's likely they would have developed very differently from the girls. Their upbringing in a world of evil and chaos would likely have pushed them into darker, more destructive paths, highlighting their unique and grim contrast to the Powerpuff Girls' more balanced lives. So without further ado, let's dive deep into the story of the Rowdyruff boys. And of course, let's set some context before we begin. Now, just like the Powerpuff Girls, the Rowdyruff boys are three kindergarten-aged boys with superpowers acquired from Chemical X. However, unlike their female counterparts, the Rowdyruff boys are evil and they thrive on causing destruction. Their main mission in life is to defeat and kill the Powerpuff Girls, a goal instilled in them by Mojo Jojo. Although they were once defeated by the Powerpuff Girls' Kiss of Death, the group consisting of Brick, Boomer, and Butch continues to be a persistent threat. Brick is the epitome of menace with his intimidating nicknames: Master Masher, King of Crushing, the Duke of Destruction, Reigning World Champion, and the Bludgeoner. As the red-eyed, long-haired, red-headed leader of the Rowdyruff boys, he stands out not just as the oldest brother, but also as the male counterpart to Blossom. His personality is a mix of cruelty, calculation, and a relentless drive to prove his strength. Ironically, his main ingredient is a puppy dog's tail, a stark contrast to his fearsome image. Basically, the arch nemesis of the Powerpuff Girls is actually secretly powered by the fluffiest part of a puppy. Boomer, the middle brother of the Rowdyruff boys, is often mockingly called dumber than the dumbest, a nod to his notable lack of intelligence compared to his siblings. With his blue eyes and blonde hair, Boomer is the male counterpart to Bubbles. Being the middle child makes him an easy target for teasing from Brick and Butch. Though not as strategic or sharp as his brothers, Boomer wields the impressive power of lightning control. Ironically, despite his electrifying ability, he is perpetually the group's dummy. His main ingredient, Snips, adds a humorous touch to his character, emphasizing his somewhat ill fate and often ridiculed nature. Butch, the Baron of Berserk, is basically what you'd get if Buttercup's love for fighting went unchecked. So basically like Buttercup on steroids, with no conscience to balance it out. He is the youngest of the Rowdyruff boys, but probably the most chaotic. You know that kid who starts a food fight in the cafeteria just because he can? Well, that's Butch. His special power is creating energy shields, which is pretty cool, until you realize he probably uses them to block his brothers from stealing the last slice of pizza. His main ingredient is snails, which explains why he's always ready to slime his way into trouble. And while he's always itching for a fight, don't be surprised if he's also the first to stir things up when nothing exciting is happening.
What's up with those guys? I think they're asking for a hiney whoop.
Probably twitching and muttering, "Are we causing chaos yet, or what?" Anyway, Season 1 kicks off as Mojo Jojo has once again been causing mischief and mayhem in the city of Townsville, much to the frustration of its citizens. His latest inventions, including powerful laser cannons and towering mechanical robots, have allowed him to wreak havoc and terrorize the city for days. However, the Powerpuff Girls, as always, manage to step in and put an end to his plans with ease. Despite his efforts, Mojo suffers 3 humiliating and high-profile defeats at the hands of the girls, leaving him feeling more frustrated and desperate than ever. It seems no matter what new tricks or inventions he comes up with, the girls always manage to best him. After his third defeat, Mojo finds himself back in prison where he's been locked up numerous times before, but this time something inside him changes. He goes through a serious mental breakdown, pacing back and forth in his cell and begins to realize that his old strategies just aren't good enough anymore. If he wants to have any chance of defeating the Powerpuff Girls once and for all, he needs to change his approach entirely. It dawns on him that he must fight fire with fire if he hopes to bring down the girls and finally get his revenge. Determined to find the answer, Mojo hatches a new plan while serving his time in prison. Posing as a student from Townsville Community College, he makes a phone call to none other than Professor Utonium, pretending to be interested in learning about the Powerpuff Girls for a school project. During the call, he asks the professor a seemingly innocent question about what the girls are made of. When Professor Utonium proudly explains that they were created using sugar, spice, and everything nice, Mojo sneers to himself. He thinks that those ingredients are far too girlish for his purposes. After some thought, Mojo comes to the conclusion that he needs to create something tougher, harder, and as he puts it, more manly. To do this, he asks himself the question, what are little boys made of? With this new idea in mind, Mojo begins gathering the necessary ingredients for his latest evil experiment, determined to make it a success this time. Even within the prison, Mojo resourcefully gathers all the materials he needs. For the snips, he plucks armpit hairs from a fellow inmate while the man is busy lifting weights in the yard. For the snails, he places an order for escargot from the prison commissary, waiting impatiently for it to arrive. And for the puppy dog's tail, Mojo sneakily steals an actual tail from the talking dog, who happens to work as a prison guard doing his daily rounds on the block. With all three key ingredients in hand, Mojo feels one step closer to achieving his goal. However, Mojo still needs one final and crucial ingredient, Chemical X. Unfortunately, getting his hands on the real Chemical X proves impossible while he's stuck in prison, so he decides to improvise. He substitutes the Chemical X with the most potent thing he can find, the filthy, clogged toilet in his cell. Mojo flushes the toilet, and what follows is an explosive reaction. The flush triggers a massive wave of dirty toilet water that floods the entire prison block, sending Mojo into a panic as he almost drowns in the chaotic flood. When the water finally runs off and the chaos subsides, Mojo Jojo looks around, expecting the worst after his reckless experiment. To his surprise, standing before him are three tough-looking boys, Brick, Boomer, and Butch, who embody everything that he had hoped for. These are the fruits of his labor, the Rowdyruff boys, his evil counterparts to the Powerpuff Girls. At first, Mojo is overwhelmed with joy, feeling the pride that every new father experiences when seeing his creations for the first time. He rushes to embrace them, overcome with the excitement of having brought them into the world. However, his joy is short-lived as the Rowdyruff boys, brimming with aggression, immediately threaten to beat Mojo up. Brick, the leader, cracks his knuckles, ready to pummel the evil simian who created them. But Mojo, quick on his feet, redirects their aggression, pointing out that their true enemy isn't him but the Powerpuff Girls, the ones who always stand in their way. He convinces them that if they really want to prove their strength and power, they should take down the Powerpuff Girls instead. The boys, intrigued by this challenge, agree, and Mojo offers to lead them straight to their foes. With no time to waste, the Rowdyruff boys bust Mojo out of prison in a display of their strength, dragging him along as they fly straight through the prison roof, leaving a trail of debris behind. The next day, after escaping from prison, the Rowdyruff boys waste no time in seeking out their targets. They track down the Powerpuff Girls, who have just finished defeating a giant octopus monster that had been wreaking havoc on Townsville. The girls, tired but victorious, barely have time to catch their breath before the Rowdyruff boys show up, issuing a direct challenge. Without hesitation, the boys launch their first strike. Their attacks swift and relentless, catching the Powerpuff Girls off guard. However, the girls quickly recover and fight back, proving they are not serious strikes and special attacks aimed directly at the girls. Despite the Powerpuff Girls' best efforts, the boys gradually start to gain the upper hand. The Rowdyruff boys fight with little regard for the safety of Townsville's citizens or the damage that they cause. They have no concern for property destruction or the rules of engagement that the girls so carefully follow. The boys even go as far as to hurl large ships, buses, and sabotaged aircraft in the girls' direction, using these massive objects as distractions to gain an advantage in the fight. Realizing the Rowdyruff boys' sheer psychopathic ruthlessness and their total disregard for human life in their obsessive pursuit to put the Powerpuff Girls in their graves, the girls quickly come to a difficult decision. They know they must find a way to lure the evil counterparts out of the city to prevent further destruction and loss of innocent lives. With this goal in mind, they take to the skies, trying to draw the boys away from Townsville and its vulnerable citizens. However, the Rowdyruff boys have no intention of letting their prey escape so easily. With sinister smirks on their faces, they kick in the afterburners, using their full speed to overtake the girls with ease. Not stopping there, the boys unleash a deadly wave of toxic fumes, knocking the girls off balance mid-air. Before the Powerpuff Girls can fully recover from the toxic attack, the Rowdyruff boys waste no time in delivering a devastating blow, one so brutal that it sends the girls hurtling toward the street below. The impact is tremendous, causing a massive crater in the streets as the girls crash into the ground, seemingly defeated once and for all. A bright, blinding flash lights up the scene, confirming their apparent downfall to the citizens of Townsville watching in horror, as well as to Mojo Jojo, who watches gleefully from a distance. Convinced that their longtime enemies are finally vanquished, the Rowdyruff boys shoot back to Mojo's hideout, eager to celebrate their decisive victory with their creator. Back at his fortress, Mojo Jojo is ecstatic. For years, the Powerpuff Girls have been a thorn in his side, constantly thwarting his plans. But now, with his perennial enemies down and out, Mojo gloats triumphantly, throwing a celebration alongside his vicious creations. Meanwhile, down in the streets of Townsville, a somber mood takes hold of the citizens. Heartbroken and grief-stricken, they gather around the crater where the girls lie motionless. Tears stream down the faces of the townspeople as they mourn what seems to be the tragic death of the heroes they have always depended on. But as the tears fall on the girl's battered body, Townsville forever, feeling that they are no longer worthy of being its protectors. Just as they are about to depart, Miss Bellum rushes over, calling them back with urgency. She insists that they cannot abandon the city now, especially since the citizens love them so much. Miss Bellum, the ever-brainy secretary, gently explains that the girls haven't truly lost. They may have been beaten in this fight, but they have not lost the battle. She offers them a fresh perspective, telling them that they've been going about fighting the Rowdyruff boys the wrong way all along. She then poses an important question. What are little boys most afraid of? Her answer offers the girl an alternative way of dealing with their counterparts. Instead of resorting to violence, she suggests they try a different approach: being nice. Armed with Miss Bellum's wise advice, the Powerpuff Girls decide to give it a try. They head straight for Mojo Jojo's lair, ready to face the Rowdyruff boys again, but this time with a completely different tactic. As expected, the Rowdyruff boys eagerly rush out, spoiling for another fight, but the girls have no intention of using their fists. Instead, they adopt flirtatious smiles, batting their eyelashes and sending playful, affectionate glances at the boys. The sudden change in behavior catches the Rowdyruff boys completely off guard, leaving them confused and disoriented. In their moment of distraction, the girls move in close and each plant a soft kiss on the cheek of their counterpart. The result is immediate and drastic. Overcome with pure disgust and horror at the unexpected affection, the Rowdyruff boys recoil in revulsion. Unable to handle the embarrassment and the repulsive feelings that come with the kisses, their bodies start to tremble and shake. The boys literally cannot handle it, and in an instant they explode into their base components: snips, snails, and puppy dog tails, leaving nothing behind but the remnants of Mojo's twisted experiment. With their evil counterparts defeated for good, Mojo Jojo is left in shock and despair. His ultimate plan has been foiled once again, and before he can escape, he is promptly arrested and taken away by the authorities. As the dust settles and Townsville is safe once more, the Powerpuff Girls take a moment to reflect on the unusual way that they won the battle with. They discuss how strange but effective it was to defeat the Rowdyruff boys without using any violence at all. Bubbles is particularly amused, giggling about how fun it was to kiss the boys, while Blossom smiles, pleased with the creative solution. Buttercup, however, crosses her arms and gives an arrogant disgust, expressing that kissing is not something she ever wants to do again. In Season 5, Him, boiling with fury, sits in his dungeon surrounded by a dim red glow, angrily watching video after video of the Powerpuff Girls effortlessly defeating various villains. Each video seems to intensify his frustration as he watches his fellow villains fall one by one to the girls' strength, speed, and teamwork. But suddenly, something catches his attention. As one of the videos plays, his frown twists into a wicked grin. He rewinds the footage, studies it closely, and his eyes light up with sinister excitement as an idea forms in his mind. The next day, the Powerpuff Girls are in the middle of their usual heroic duties, battling and defeating a wave of enormous rampaging monsters in the heart of Townsville. The trio works in flawless harmony, using their powers to smash, blast, and pummel the creatures into submission. Just as the last monster is sent flying into the sky, they land on the ground feeling confident in yet another successful save. But before they can even catch their breath, the ground beneath them begins to tremble violently. Without warning, a large rocky outcropping bursts from the earth. Towering above them and standing at the top of this platform are none other than the Rowdyruff boys. The Powerpuff Girls gasp in shock. The boys, who had been defeated in their last encounter, are somehow back. Brick, Boomer, and Butch stand smugly staring down at the girls with cocky grins plastered on their faces. However, instead of being intimidated, the girls immediately notice something odd. Each of the boys now sports a brand new hairstyle. Unable to resist, the girls burst into laughter, mocking the boys' silly new looks. "What happened to your hair?" Bubbles teases, giggling. "Did you lose a bet or something?" Buttercup snickers, and Blossom raises an eyebrow, unimpressed. The boys, however, are unaffected by the teasing and are ready for battle. Without hesitation, the fight erupts. Each girl squares off against her counterpart. Blossom takes on Brick, Bubbles faces Boomer, and Buttercup charges at Butch. Punches, kicks, and blasts of energy fly back and forth as the two groups clash. The battle is fierce, with neither side gaining a clear advantage. The girls find themselves evenly matched with the boys in every way, despite their previous victory over them. The standoff persists as they continue fighting, with powerful blows landing on both sides but no clear victor in sight. As the fight drags on, Blossom, trying to think quickly, remembers how they had defeated the Rowdyruff boys before. A flash of inspiration strikes her, and she calls out to her sisters. "Hey, remember last time?" she shouts over the sounds of the battle. "Let's try the same strategy and we can finish this now." Bubbles and Buttercup, catching on to her plan, nod in agreement. After all, it had worked perfectly before, so they immediately stop fighting and begin showing affection to the boys, approaching with sweet smiles and batting their eyelashes, ready to plant a kiss on each of their counterparts. However, to their horror, the plan doesn't go as expected. The boys don't react with disgust and repulsion like they had before. Instead, something far more sinister begins to happen. As the girls lean in to give them kisses, the rowdy boys don't recoil. Instead, they grin wider and their bodies begin to glow with a strange energy. The more affection the girls show, the larger the boys grow. Like their muscles bulge and their size increases with every kiss and sweet word, feeding on the girls' affection like it's some kind of fuel. The girls step back in shock, watching in disbelief as the boys expand to 10 times their normal size, towering over them like giants. The boys start to try and gross out the girls by cracking their knuckles, picking scabs, and spitting. They then attack them, leaving them battered and bruised, and they squash them into a hockey puck. They play hockey with them until Boomer hits them into an indoor car park. The girls go up to the top of the building with not much of a plan. Blossom believes that the boys are too powerful for them to beat this time, and they've met their match. This infuriates Buttercup, as she still thinks the boys can be defeated, as well as insulting them. Not too long after, the boys spot the girls on top of the building, leading to another game called Ultimate Fight. After a montage of continuous beating, the girls are completely overwhelmed as the boys laugh evilly as they look down on them. Butch places a slug up Bubbles' back as they all laugh at her. Once Buttercup regains consciousness, she notices Bubbles being teased by the boys, as well as Butch sticking his tongue out. Fed up with this, Buttercup swoops in to attack Butch and makes him bite his tongue, causing him to shrink after being laughed at by the other two boys. Blossom realizes this and gives her sisters the idea of embarrassing the boys to make them shrink, aka threatening their masculinity. The girls do all kinds of things to embarrass the boys, babying them, putting makeup, pulling down pants, and that makes them shrink down until they are smaller than the buckles of the girls' shoes, having turned the tables. Him then appears again and reprimanded the boys for not defeating the girls and makes them disappear. He then tells the girls that they have won this time, but they will not be so lucky in the future because the boys are back in town. In another episode, Princess Morbucks is stuck in a massive traffic jam when she grows impatient and decides to investigate the holdup. She exits her limo only to see the Powerpuff Girls in the midst of a fierce battle with none other than the Rowdyruff boys. During the chaos, the boys are sent flying, crashing directly into Morbucks' limo. Furious, they quickly fly off again, leaving her car in shambles. Princess, however, isn't discouraged. Instead, she hatches a plan. Donning her evil gear, she rushes over to stop the Powerpuff Girls from continuing their fight. Giddy with excitement, she asks the Rowdyruff boys if she can join their team. The boys laugh at her and cruelly reject her, calling her a lame sissy baby girl and mocking her by saying boys are better than girls. Brick even kicks her across the battlefield, knocking her into the area where the Powerpuff Girls had been recovering from the earlier fight. As the girls, annoyed by Princess, prepare to pummel her, she breaks down and genuinely starts crying. She tells them what the Rowdyruff boys said, stirring anger within the girls. Seeing the opportunity, she embellishes their insults, making up even worse things that the boys supposedly said about the girls. This fuels the girls' rage even more. In a cunning twist, Morbucks offers to help them get revenge by becoming one of them, adding that she has a plan. She leads the girls to a hidden warehouse filled with high-tech anti-Powerpuff weapons she had been developing. There, she proudly shows off an army tank armed with a supersonic blast gun, a plane loaded with multiple scatter bombs, and a boat equipped with a molecular electronic destructor. Princess proposes that the girls can use the weapons to destroy the Rowdyruff boys, but only if they allow her to officially become a Powerpuff Girl. While Buttercup and Bubbles immediately oppose the idea, Blossom, intrigued by the plane's capabilities, reluctantly agrees to let Princess join them, but only until the boys are defeated. Princess grins, promising the girls they won't regret their decision. Later, the Rowdyruff boys are causing more mayhem, robbing a fish market on the pier just to grab some burgers. Their spree continues as they prepare to rob a video game store. However, they're distracted when Princess Morbucks and the Powerpuff Girls arrive in full force. Blossom pilots the plane, Buttercup commands the tank, and Bubbles steers the boat, all ready for action. On Morbucks' command, the girls begin firing at the Rowdyruff boys with their high-tech weapons, but every shot misses. The boys, excited by the challenge, zip over to the vehicles, easily overpowering the girls and kicking them out of controls. Now in control of the plane, the tank, and the boat, the Rowdyruff boys turn the weapons on each other, relishing the destruction as they battle one another. Amid the chaos, the boys continue firing recklessly until all three vehicles are reduced to wreckage on the pier. They crash into the debris, paralyzed by their own love of destruction, but laughing uncontrollably at the same time. As the dust settles, the Powerpuff Girls land on the pier victorious. Blossom proudly declares that their plan has worked perfectly. They have outwitted the boys once again by letting their love for destruction defeat them. However, Morbucks, frustrated by the girls' nonchalant attitude and the way they handle the battle, starts yelling at them. Annoyed and uninterested in her complaints, the Powerpuff Girls simply fly away, leaving her fuming on the pier. The Rowdyruff boys are up to their usual mayhem, causing trouble with a man at a soda machine. Brick, seizing an opportunity, sends Boomer off to steal some candy. Boomer spots a boy with the candy and, with little hesitation, uses his strengths to grab it by force. However, his plan goes awry when the Powerpuff Girls intervene. They quickly overpower Boomer, bringing him to Professor Utonium's laboratory, where they trap him in a containment ray to neutralize his threat. Realizing that Brick and Butch will likely become suspicious if Boomer doesn't return, the girls come up with a clever plan. They decide to disguise Bubbles as Boomer and send her to join the remaining Rowdyruff boys to avoid raising any alarms. Bubbles, now dressed as Boomer, heads out to meet Brick and Butch. Her first stop is Fuzzy Lumpkin's shack, where Fuzzy, the property-obsessed pink furry villain, is already bound and restrained. Upon arrival, Brick and Butch ask Bubbles, who is pretending to be Boomer, about the candy. Bubbles, maintaining her cover, falsely claims that she ate it and rudely insults her brothers by calling them jerks. Brick and Butch, amused by the supposed Boomer's attitude, laugh off the insult and continue with their plan, oblivious to the deception. Bubbles, disguised as Boomer, faces a tough time with Brick and Butch. Brick, in a fit of frustration, punches her in the eye, and both Brick and Butch tease her about her poor attempts at graffiti, adding to her discomfort. The next challenge involves a contest to see who can spit the farthest and hit a plane. Brick goes first but misses spectacularly, hitting a satellite mirror instead. Butch follows, and although he also misses the plane, he hits the backup satellite mirror. When it's Bubbles' turn, she takes aim and spits with surprising force. Her spit travels across Townsville, hitting Butch and splattering the park. Brick, though disappointed that Bubbles didn't hit the plane, praises her for her impressive spit accuracy, noting that she managed to destroy the part of the park and even hit Butch. He dubs her the Super Spitter,
Well, you've been acting kinda weird all day.
and comments that she's been acting kinda weird all day, but cool now. Despite her success, Bubbles struggles to maintain her cover. There are moments when it seems like she might give herself away, especially when Brick continues to rough her up. At one point, Brick makes her eat a cockroach, which causes a radio transmitter being used by Blossom, Buttercup, and the Professor to break, adding more complications to their situation. The situation escalates when Brick and Butch, still under the impression that Bubbles is Boomer, approach the laboratory door. As they enter, the Powerpuff Girls and Professor Utonium hide to avoid detection. Inside, Brick and Butch discover the real Boomer trapped in the containment bubble, clad only in his underwear. Just as the boys are about to turn around, Bubbles, still disguised as Boomer, activates the containment ray, successfully trapping Brick, Butch, and Boomer. It seems like a perfect capture, but Bubbles, eager to show off her newfound spitting skill, lets loose a spit that flies across the laboratory. And unfortunately, it strikes the ray and causes it to explode, allowing the boys to escape. Realizing that the situation has gone awry, the Powerpuff Girls decide to let the boys go, planning to deal with them another time. Bubbles, feeling remorseful, apologizes to the Professor for the trouble. The Professor, in turn, apologizes to Bubbles for making her eat a cockroach. Bubbles, trying to lighten the mood, mentions that the cockroach actually tasted like chicken. Note. And in this episode, the Powerpuff Dynamo wreaks havoc across the city, leaving chaos in its wake as buildings crumble and streets are torn apart. The Powerpuff Girls arrive and are determined to stop the mechanical menace, but they're puzzled as to who could be controlling it. As they approach, Dynamo launches a barrage of missiles at them, forcing the girls to dodge and barely escape the explosive assault. Blossom exclaims that whoever's behind this knows how to use Dynamo, and her voice tinges with concern. Buttercup, always eager for a fight, suspects the Rowdyruff boys might be the culprits. However, remembering their reckless behavior when they destroyed Princess Morbux's machines, she quickly reconsiders. "Those idiots would have trashed the whole thing already," she mutters. The girls dive back into the fray, launching laser beams and energy attacks, aiming to take down the out-of-control war machine. For a moment, it seems like they're making progress as Dynamo slows down, its systems appearing to falter. However, just when victory seems within reach, Dynamo retaliates with a powerful swipe, sending all three girls flying backward, crashing into nearby buildings. Groaning in pain, Bubbles picks herself up and shouts, "This thing's stronger than we thought." Blossom narrows her eyes, trying to figure out who's really behind the attack as Dynamo marches forward, showing no signs of stopping. Bubbles suspects Mojo Jojo, but they dismiss him, believing he wouldn't be responsible for such chaos. After ruling out other villains like Gangrene Gang, the Amoeba Boys, Fuzzy Lumpkins, and him, the girls are left stumped. As Dynamo wreaks more havoc, they come up with no solid leads, leading to humorous suggestions like Buttercup being the culprit. Despite their best efforts, including firing a Powerpuff Mega Blast, they miss and Dynamo retaliates. In desperation, they use their Razzle Dazzle move to finally bring the robot down. And the pilot is revealed to be the mayor, who admits he pressed the red button that set Dynamo on autopilot. In a twist, he presses it again, sending the robot back on its rampage. The girls are left to fight again, and the episode ends with the narrator noting that the hero's work is never done. On Father's Day, Mojo Jojo finds himself at the park where he encounters the Rowdyruff boys. Astonished, Mojo asks them how they've returned to life after the Powerpuff Girls had defeated them. The Rowdyruff boys laugh in response, and soon, Him arrives on the scene. Him reveals that he resurrected the boys, but with improvements. He corrected Mojo's previous mistakes and made them even stronger. Mojo Jojo, both shocked and furious, begins to argue with him. Their disagreement quickly escalates into a heated battle over who is the more evil and thus the better father figure for the Rowdyruff boys. Each tries to prove their superiority through various schemes, with both attempting to outdo the other in showcasing their malevolence. In their quest to demonstrate their evil credentials, Mojo and Him engage in increasingly outrageous antics, including targeting the mayor. They orchestrate elaborate plans to harass and torment him, each hoping to impress the Rowdyruff boys with their cruelty. Their rivalry intensifies as they pull out all the stops to prove they are the true masters of evil. As the day wears on, the Rowdyruff boys grow increasingly exhausted and frustrated with Mojo Jojo and Him's incessant bickering. Their patience reaches a breaking point when they shout at both villains, expressing their disdain for the petty argument. The boys declare that they don't care who is eviler or more foolish. What truly matters to them is their single-minded goal of destroying the Powerpuff Girls. It's the only purpose they've had since their first encounter with the girls. And with that, the Rowdyruff boys take off, flying towards Townsville with renewed determination to find and battle the Powerpuff Girls once more. Mojo Jojo and Him, overcome with joy at the boys' unwavering commitment to their cause, celebrate their departure. They revel in the satisfaction of knowing that the Rowdyruff boys are focusing on their ultimate goal, defeating the Powerpuff Girls. In a tear-filled embrace, Mojo and Him watch proudly as the boys head towards the city, ready to unleash their fury. They cheer, recognizing this as the pinnacle of their evil schemes. And so, with Mojo and Him happy together, the day is doomed, thanks to the Rowdyruff boys. Now, there are a few interesting theories that fans have proposed regarding the fate of Rowdyruff boys after their final appearance and custody battle. Since their story was left unresolved in the series, these theories attempt to fill in the gaps. One theory suggests that the Rowdyruff boys were eventually defeated off-screen by the Powerpuff Girls. Since the boys were never physically beaten in any of their on-screen encounters, this theory suggests that if the series had continued, the girls would have developed the method to defeat them permanently.
Sir, I think the girls may be in trouble.
Their absence from later specials in the series finale could indicate that the girls finally found a way to neutralize them once and for all. This could involve learning new powers or perfecting tactics like the embarrassment-based strategy they used in The Boys Are Back in Town. Another theory is that after their final defeat, the Rowdyruff boys may have simply left Townsville for good. The boys, having grown tired of constantly being foiled by the Powerpuff Girls, even if not physically defeated, may have sought to cause trouble elsewhere. Well, this theory suggests that while still alive, the boys abandoned their rivalry with the girls, perhaps recognizing that they could never permanently win against them. A less common but still intriguing theory is that the Rowdyruff boys may have reformed off-screen. In their earlier appearances, they showed some capability for humor and fun, even if it was destructive. It's possible that, like in the city of Clipsville, where they appeared as teenagers, they matured and decided to pursue less villainous goals. While this might seem out of character, it's a plausible direction the writers could have taken if the series continued. And then there's Him, who revived the Rowdyruff boys in The Boys Are Back in Town, and just as he did that, he also could have played a role in their ultimate fate. The boys' repeated failures could have made Him view them as a liability. In this theory, Him either abandoned or destroyed the boys himself after being disappointed in their inability, like most fathers do. This could explain why the boys never appeared again in the series. And a more meta theory is that the creators simply phased out the Rowdyruff boys due to a shift in the show's focus. Since they didn't appear in key episodes or the series finale, the writers may have chosen not to revisit their storyline. This suggests that the boys weren't given a definitive ending because the creators wanted to move on to other narrative arcs. And it's also possible that the Rowdyruff boys were left in limbo intentionally, in case future reboots or spin-offs wanted to revisit them. This theory holds that the boys weren't necessarily defeated or written out for good, but that their story could continue in another version of the Powerpuff Girls. And to be fair, it has seen reboots in the past, so the theory is pretty valid. Although each of these are just theories, they reflect the boys' ambiguous ending, offering possibilities ranging from their permanent defeat to an open-ended future. But anyway, that would be it from us. If you enjoyed the video, let us know which Rowdyruff member was your favorite, and also don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this on your feed. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace!